Hey, welcome to Class Act Media. I'm Jack, and I just saw Spider-Man Far From Home. I really liked it. Not as much as Homecoming, but I thought it was a pretty solid Spidey adventure. Even if his arc kind of felt like just a retread of his arc from Homecoming. One thing that really stood out to me about the movie was the villain, Mysterio, probably my favorite villain in a Spider-Man movie since Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. But there's one thing he did that really irked me, and I think comic book movies need to stop relying on. Let's talk about it. So yeah, I already mentioned it in my video about Homecoming, but I am genuinely sick of villains learning the secret identities of the heroes in comic book movies. It's just such a cheap and easy way of adding tension to a story. Now, you're probably thinking, Jack, you're making a big deal about a super inconsequential thing, get over it. But I say nay. If I stopped complaining about shit nobody else cares about, then I just wouldn't have a YouTube channel anymore, now would I? But okay, let's take it back and try to figure out what about this trope irks me so much. First of all, I read the comics. I'm not saying that makes me better than you, but I am heavily implying it. But seriously, I do think it's important to take a look at the source material for this video. I'm going to walk you through a couple iconic comic book moments. The Amazing Spider-Man number 317 from 1989. Peter Parker's life is getting stressful and complicated, as tends to happen to his life. He's about to go out somewhere with Aunt May, but as he opens the door, there's Eddie Brock, aka Venom, just standing there waiting for him. Batman number 232 from 1971. Batman walks into the Batcave to find Ra's al Ghul in his first ever appearance, just sitting there waiting for him. Now, I know what you're probably shouting at the screen right now. Jack, those are examples of the villains figuring out the hero's secret identities. You just said you hated that. Well, there's an important distinction. These heroes have already fought dozens, hell, hundreds of other villains who had never figured out who they really were. Not only does this make the heroes seem more competent, but it makes the villains who do end up deducing their secret identities all the more dangerous. When every single movie has a scene where the villain learns who the hero is under the mask, it diminishes the impact and makes the hero look downright incompetent. Need I remind you of the property of Peter Parker scene from The Amazing Spider-Man? And if this is a problem in the movies, it's 10 times worse in the TV shows. When goddamn Heatwave figures out the Flash's secret identity, maybe it's time for him to give up. On top of that, in some cases it ruins the dynamic between the hero and the villain. Let's take a look at Superman number 2 from 1987. In it, Lex Luthor builds a computer capable of figuring out who Superman really is, and it correctly deduces that he's Clark Kent. And how does Luthor respond to this information? He decides that the computer is defective and orders for it to be destroyed. He simply can't accept that a man as powerful as Superman would choose to disguise himself as such a plain and average person. It simply doesn't make sense to him. In Batman v Superman, Luthor just figures out that Clark is Superman and is treated as a footnote in the script. Guess what? I know exactly what you're thinking again. Batman v Superman is doing a much different take on Lex Luthor than the comics. Just look at how Jesse Eisenberg plays him.
Day versus night.
Well, I'd argue otherwise. Sure, personality-wise, he's not very Luthor-y, but look at his philosophy. He clearly sees Superman as some sort of godlike figure, and while Eisen Luthor may have a much more religiously based reason for hating Superman, it's really not that far off from how comic Luthor sees the Man of Steel. Which is why it makes no sense for him to learn and immediately accept that he's Clark Kent. They took his comic book motivation without really questioning how that should affect his character. Eisen Luthor learning Superman's secret identity is a cheap plot device for a lazy script. Which brings me to my last point, it's lazy. At this point, every time I go into a piece of superhero media where the hero wears a mask, I just take it for granted that the villain is going to learn his secret identity. It's the easiest possible dramatic plot twist. Not only that, it can create some pretty major plot holes. Let's look at Batman v Superman again. Why doesn't Luthor just tell everyone who Superman is? Like, I get that he's dead, but still, that would be a pretty big bombshell to drop. Or okay, let's look at a movie I actually liked, Shazam. Why doesn't Dr. Sivana tell everyone who Captain Marvel is? I don't know, maybe he did and nobody believed that he was really a little kid. Even though I hate this trope, the MCU Spider-Man movies have handled it pretty well. There's always a reason the villains don't tell anyone that Pete is Spider-Man. But they shouldn't even have that information in the first place. But okay, you're probably wondering why the secret identity even matters. You're saying that in a post-Iron Man movie world, they're a relic of the past. And sure, some heroes don't necessarily need it. Iron Man, for example, works just fine without one. But arguably the three most well-known superheroes of all time, Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man, need it to function. Batman because the legend of the Bat instills fear in the hearts of criminals. Nobody's gonna be afraid if they hear Bruce Wayne is coming after them.
As a man, I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible.
Superman because he can't be the symbol of justice and peace all the time. Can you imagine how exhausting that would be? He needs to be able to slip into regular life. And Spider-Man because one of the biggest conflicts of his character is his constant juggling of his life as Spider-Man with his life as Peter Parker. Without that, his character falls apart. It just wouldn't work. Anyway, that's just a quick little rant about something that really grinds my gears. Side note, the fact that The Dark Knight doesn't do this at all is what makes it the best comic book movie of all time. The only reason. See you next time, guys.